All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome in once again because YouTube does not give me the audio levels again. Just let me know if there are any audio issues here to start. That has been a common theme, here lately. If you guys can hear me, I'm going to tell you about John Standard Time here because the gall of you guys, the gall of Tyler to complain about John Standard Time when I'm giving you an emergency bonus live, not previously scheduled. I'm just kidding. Like you guys can harass me about it. But there's just I'm spinning a lot of plates right now. I'm not gonna lie. I got done with work and I was like, man, tonight's going to be a pretty chill night. I went to a networking event right after work, and I was like, I'm going to get through this, then I can come home and finally like kick my feet up and relax and not worry about working on anything tonight and take a little break. And all of a sudden, I saw actually the first thing I saw my guy R Webb. I saw R Webb in my DMs saying you're going to have to go live tonight, right? And I thought, man, just because of I mean, it was a big deal. The news that we got earlier in the day, not Oklahoma and Texas, but that Stewart Mandel, of all people, got a leak from a Pac-12 athletic director who was talking about how unhappy he is with the current situation in the Pac-12 with the TV deal. And I thought, well, that is a pretty big deal, R Webb, but I don't know if I just wanted to relax tonight, so I don't know if I want to actually go live with that. And then I saw he had sent me a DM before that was the article about the Oklahoma and Texas move. And so you know what? The gravity and the weight of those two stories, that's enough for an emergency live tonight. All right. I feel you guys on that. That is enough for an emergency live. So if you have not been on Twitter all day, if you are unaware of what is going on here, Oklahoma and Texas have officially reached a deal with not only the Big 12, but Fox and ESPN to get out of the conference a year early. They'll be leaving in 2024. The negotiated exit fee was down to $100 million total, so $50 million per school, when it could have been as high as like 80 or 90 per school. That money is going to be important for the rest of the 8 legacy schools in the Big 12 that are going to have to be made whole for the money that they're giving up for the 4 newcomers this next year. I do know that it's going to break down to about, articles are saying like $10 million a school. I think by the time they pay off lawyers and attorneys and all that stuff, it may be more in the $8 million range per school. But that should get everybody close to what they were losing in order to give some money to UCF, Houston, BYU, and Cincinnati coming in here. So I'm going to read you all the details from a couple different stories. One is the story from Ross Dellinger at Sports Illustrated, who, shout out to him. You do have to give him credit. When the story came out from Pete Thamel that the Oklahoma and Texas negotiations were essentially dead, Pete Thamel was one of those from SI, and he credits himself in this story, which he deserves to. He was one of them that said, like, hey, actually what I'm hearing is that it's hit a snag, but it's not done. This is not a total death knell, which again makes me wonder about Brett Yormark. I mean, this is one of many things to talk about here. Yormark and his ability to get a deal done. This guy has a reputation as a deal maker. And I've said Thamel has been the guy that when the Big 12 talked to Gonzaga, he got that story out there. He got Thamel to report it. He got people talking. When the Big 12 and the Pac-12 had that brief flirtation with a merger, he got Pete Thamel to write the story that said it was actually the Big 12 that said thanks, but no thanks, and not the Pac-12. Now we have this just days before we get this deal totally done, a deal that clearly internally the Big 12 wanted. Just days before, suddenly we have a Pete Thamel story saying, these negotiations are dead, not going to happen, Texas and Oklahoma. My speculation here is that this could have been a strategic leak that helped work to jumpstart negotiations again here, and things got done rather quickly. And in that case, it may have been more of a, I don't know if that was more to motivate Oklahoma and Texas, if it was more to motivate Fox, which was the bigger hangup in the TV deals here. But Brett McMurphy did have the detail today about what is going on with Fox in all of this and their role in this. So we'll have that for you, like how much money they're going to get, how they're being made whole. McMurphy was the one to get that detail and not Dellinger. So there's all of that. And as important, as good, as healthy as I think that is for both sides, honestly, the bigger story may wind up being here. That Stewart Mandel is reporting that sources have said the Pac-12 TV deal is not in good shape right now, that they had overpromised, and he even quotes an anonymous Pac-12 AD, like a direct quote, talking about how frustrated he is with the current state of the TV negotiations there. That potentially is the bigger story, coupled with a Ross Dellinger tweet that said, expect the Big 12 to be very aggressive in expansion now because Yormark's itinerary was get a TV deal done, negotiate the OU Texas exit, and then expand. So buckle up, I guess is what I'm saying. That is really the point. Buckle the hell up, everybody. If you're a Big 12 fan, if you're a Pac 12 fan, because I think there's a lot that is going to continue to happen now in light of all of this. So that's it. We're just going to talk about that. I'm going to read to you the information that we do have that is out there, but you guys, you know the deal. You're more than welcome to chime in. We've got upwards of 200 people in here already, so I won't be able to follow what's going on in the chat. If you want to make your voice heard, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. You click that, you can donate. It will then pin your chat, your question or comment up at the top for me, and guarantees that I read it on the chat here tonight. So it's a way to make your voice heard, control the content, weigh in, and support the work that I'm doing to bring you Big 12 content on a week in, week out basis, and bring you Big 12 content a day after I just did a live, and get you a little bonus action here, a little emergency live. You know, in the podcast world, they say emergency pod. This is in essence our emergency pod, because there is so much happening. And don't even get me started about, K-State's got some issues to worry about in their world that could be big breaking news happening here fairly soon too. So it's just, there's too much going on today. This was supposed to be nice chill day for your boy, but I guess we'll just wait until Friday for that. But I digress. Happy to be here. Happy that we've got a lot going on. Let me tweet out this link real quick. Bear with me. I'm going to tweet this out just to make sure that the people know. Live on YouTube talking OU Texas exit and 12 AD leaking to Mandel. All right, we'll just go with that. All right, so we're off and running here. I see R Webb, the guy who jump-started my night, and I will also give him this shout-out for all of you that are happy that I'm doing this live here. R Webb was the first one to encourage me to do so. R Webb says, hipper, younger, cooler, be Izzo. Indeed, hipper, younger, cooler, man. It seems like he has really outfoxed Kliavkov here. That's what this feels like to me. And Stewart Mandel's story from earlier did kind of back that point up. I mean, Yormark is making moves, and he is getting stuff done. Meanwhile, George Kliavkov is leaving everybody to wonder what exactly the hell is going on, because nothing has happened, and it's just this kind of collection of frustration, it seems like, in the Pac-12 right now. By the way, please like the video if you have not yet. Totally free. Obviously, you can donate by clicking the $ below the chat box where it says say something to get your question or comment on the show tonight. But also a totally free way to support the channel is just to like the video, leave a comment. If you're catching this after the fact, that's it. Whether you love me or hate me, just leave a comment. That also helps with the YouTube algorithm. So I appreciate everybody who does that. And you can support me on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4. I see Calico Willie, my guy. Thank you for being here. Calico says twice in 2 days. Love the dedication, John. Well, as I tweeted out earlier to somebody, I am a man of the people. I'm a man of the people. So I'm here. In a time of need, I'm here, folks. We've got big stuff happening. I am here for you. Remember that. Don't say that I never did anything for you. No, but it's an important day, and I am, of course, here, Calico. Thank you for being here as well. Wolf 58. What's up, Wolf 58? Wolf 58 says, Wolf 58, our Ohio State fan here, says, saw an interview with Tony Altimore the other day. Had more detailed info about future realignment. Any chance you'd have him on the show again? We can do that. I'll just, like, being totally transparent with you guys. Like, the only reason I don't do more having guests on is just because, like, it's difficult to coordinate a lot of times. Like, I run very, you guys probably get tired of me saying this, but I run very low on bandwidth as it is right now with a day job and trying to do this and a K-State podcast. And setting up a guest is a difficult thing to do when, like, it's tougher to do on weeknight evenings to make it work with schedules. I can't really do it that often during the day because of the day job. So, like, it's a little tricky. But yeah, Tony, I appreciate the work that he does. I appreciate him doing the interview that he did. That's been a while, but he had all sorts of detailed information and is a very good resource on realignment. So yeah, that is something we can do. I told you guys the other day, I think, like, there are a couple other college football guys that I've had in mind to try and get on here, but I was kind of waiting for, like, let's have things settle down a little bit, perhaps get through basketball season, because for me, that's pretty busy right now with K-State and the season that they are having. So eventually, yes, I do hope to make that happen. Cyclone Steve, thank you for being here. Appreciate you, man. Cyclone Steve says heard we're paying 144 million to the 4 new schools. Well, they're going to get, I believe it's $18 million per year when they come in here, and that's obviously there are 2 years of that before the new TV deal kicks in 2025. I'm trying to pull up that exact dollar figure for you here. Here we go. So despite the 4 new members taking a smaller distribution cut in 23 and 24, about $18 million each year. So we could just do a little bit of math here. I'm going to pull up my online calculator. 18 times 4 times 2. Yep, that's exactly $144 million. So, yep, you are correct. You are correct, Cyclone Steve. $144 million to be divided up over 2 years. So, while everybody else will be, I mean, you know, that new TV deal is the $32 million deal for everybody. It's going to be $18 million that the others are making. Although I say that, and I would guess that the 18 is like total in everything. So it really would be closer to like 35, 40 with all the college football playoff money, NCAA tournament money, not just the TV deal money for the Big 12 schools there. So, I mean, it'll be something like that. You're going to have, I'd say probably half. They're going to be making about half of what the legacy schools will be making upon entering here. So, yeah, I think your number is correct there, Cyclone Steve. Nathan, what's up, Nathan? Wow, Tony Altimore really getting some love here. Nathan, I appreciate the support. Thank you for being here on the channel. Nathan says, your friend Tony Altimore will have to take back everything he said about the Big 12 when Yormark gets into the 4th window. Go Cougs. Well, I'm not here to try and dunk on Tony Altimore because, and I understand your sentiment there for sure. But I'm not trying to dunk on him. He's a good dude. He's a lot of valuable information. Obviously, his sensibilities are a little more Pac-12 leaning because that's where he is from. That's where he went to school. But I mean, he's also like a USC guy that cares very much about the Big 12. So like, I appreciate that. I don't think he needs to be vilified, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, because he's somebody that I think just has a genuine interest in the good of the sport and both leagues, both conferences there. So, but I understand. I mean, really, Nathan, if you want to get after somebody today, it would be Stewart Mandel. So you need to get after, because I mean, again, I respect Mandel, but he was a guy that, you know, pretty plainly, and I saw the tweets resurfacing today because people brought him back up, like pretty plainly it said Pac-12 has more TV value than the Big 12, and then wrote his own story today basically saying that may well not be the fact. And that is what certainly it sounds like people in the Pac-12 are starting to say right now. Laura asked the question. Thank you, Laura. Appreciate your support. Thank you for being here. Laura just says, now what? Well, I can tell you now what, because of this tweet that we got from Ross Dellinger. It says, I referenced it earlier, but he says, after negotiating OU and Texas's exit, the Big 12 and Commissioner Brett Yormark are expected to aggressively pursue further expansion, a source tells SI Now. Expansion is the third of 3 goals that Yormark set for his first year in office. 1, TV deal. 2, OU Texas exit. 3, further expansion. So when you combine this, the fact that he now has the OU Texas deal done, he's got the TV deal done, you've got that tweet, and then today we're seeing the smoke coming out of the Pac-12 that the natives are pretty restless there right now. I think the writing is on the wall for what's going to happen now. I think it is going to be a pretty aggressive pursuit here of these 4 corner schools in the Pac-12 and or potentially Gonzaga, and trying to extend the basketball wing of the conference too, which is something that's been reported about a little bit recently. For Yormark and company. So I think it's pretty obviously moving there, that we're going to see this heat up and pick up a little bit now. McMuffin, what's up, McMuffin? McMuffin, thank you for being here. McMuffin says, whatever it takes, beat UT, beat OU, last chance. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the initial reactions everyone's going to have today is like, all right, whatever you got on your schedule this year, Texas or Oklahoma, both, none, whatever, make the most of it, because you're not going to get shots after that. Don't imagine that you're going to be seeing them on the schedule after this upcoming season. So it'll be the last bedlam. K-State, for instance, I'm disappointed now to know that they probably have played Oklahoma for the last time, or at least in a very long time, because OU is not on the schedule this year. That series has been working out pretty swimmingly for my Wildcats. If you guys hadn't noticed, they'll go to Austin. So better win that game, man. Better win that game this year. Markel, appreciate you being here. Thank you for donating. Appreciate your support, man. Markel says, it's been a good run, and this last season will be thrilling. For many of us Longhorn fans, this is a bittersweet moment. Hook 'em. Well, I appreciate that sentiment a lot, Markel, because a ton of Texas fans just have not really had that sentiment at all. And, talking down on the Big 12, ready to get out of the conference. And I would imagine that there probably are many that are in the same boat as you. We just don't tend to hear from them as much because that's a much more reasonable take than, calling the Big 12 a poverty conference and trying to huff and puff your way out the door of a league that you haven't won since Obama was in office. By the way, since the beginning of Obama being in office. So point being, I appreciate your sentiment. I appreciate you coming here to share that. And I wish that was more of the tone that a lot of those discussions would have between Big 12 fans and Texas and Oklahoma fans. But I understand why we are where we are and how this is going down. Boom to the Sooner. Boom to the Sooner. Thank you for being here. Big day for Boom to the Sooner. He says, last football season in the Big 12, we will go out on top, beating our chests, or will we be punted out of the Big 12? Maybe interesting. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think I think you guys will have a better season in all likelihood than last year. I think it would be tough to be much worse than what it was last year. You got Dylan Gabriel back, more familiarity within the program, great recruiting class. I think there's a lot of reason to believe that Oklahoma will improve. But do I think that means the Sooners are going to go out on top? I don't necessarily know that I believe that. And I don't know, the dynamics in play there are now very interesting. Everybody has some finality here. Nobody's going to want Texas and Oklahoma to be the last team, one of those two, to win this league. And you've had back-to-back years now where that has not happened. So I think that will be a fascinating dynamic to watch in this new league. Can the 14-team league do it again, keep Oklahoma and Texas from winning it on their way out the door, to be able to say, hey, man, last 3 years, we handled ourselves quite well, got 2 teams into the college football playoff, had 3 different winners, tons of people watching the Big 12 championship game. Didn't matter that we didn't have you. That would be a great thing for everybody here in the league. But, for Oklahoma fans and move to the Sooner, you certainly have a lot of excitement to look forward to. Okay, DJ Crazy A, I see your comment there. I'm going to pause for a second. I will come back to that, I promise, DJ Crazy A. But I feel like I've put people off too long here without reading the actual article here from Dellinger, getting you some of the legitimate, tangible details that are here about the Texas and Oklahoma exit. So put a pin in that real quick, DJ Crazy A, and I promise I will address it as best that I can. I will also tell you on the Colin Klein situation, I don't know that I have a ton to give you that's going to make you feel necessarily better or worse. But okay, so the Longhorns and Sooners. This is from Sports Illustrated and Ross Dellinger. The Longhorns and Sooners have finalized an agreement with the Big 12 as well as its television partners to exit the league 1 year earlier than scheduled. Under the agreement, the schools would join the SEC in July of 2024 in time to participate in the 24 football season. So it turns out the parties, specifically the networks, ESPN and Fox, restarted negotiations soon after the latest hitch and were steered toward a compromise by self-proclaimed dealmaker Brett Yormark, the brash Big 12 commissioner who 7 months into his tenure has scored a lucrative victory for his legacy schools. And that is the interesting part here. I think there was a time where we would have kind of viewed this like, okay, like bittersweet a little bit from the Big 12 side of things, because you're losing Texas and Oklahoma. You didn't want to really lose them in the first place. And it's like, hey, I mean, I guess hang on to that as long as you can, make them really have to sweat it out and be uncomfortable with the new situation as long as possible. But now I think everybody's just in a position where it's like, hey, Big 12 has kind of proven they can stand on their own 2 feet. The Big 12 has been very self-sufficient, with Cincy being in the playoff 2 years ago, obviously this past year, getting TCU to the national championship game. I mentioned you 2 back-to-back years of 8+ million people watching the Big 12 championship game. Great viewership numbers there when it didn't include Texas and Oklahoma. Basketball is phenomenal with or without Texas and OU. A lot of things happening that are very positive in the Big 12 right now. And things have been awkward. And it just seemed, Oklahoma and Texas still, it was pointed out in this article, still have not posted their 2023 schedules on their actual websites yet. Just being petty, you-know-whats about this whole thing. I think everybody is just kind of at their wits' end and like ready to move on, especially if you're going to throw on the Big 12 trying to be very aggressive in realignment right now and expansion and trying to go after other schools. Like then you're just even furthering the fact that it just makes sense to just get Texas and Oklahoma out of here. And no one wants to hear you're whining and complaining about having to play this schedule in 2023 anymore. And the fact that you're having to play these new teams, even though you didn't vote on them, even though that vote wouldn't have mattered, and even though you're the reason that was happening in the first place. No more of that. Just be gone, do your thing, go away. I think everybody is like legitimately in that position. And the other part is obviously the finances of it. The Big 12 schools needed those exit fees to be made whole for the money that they're giving the 4 new schools. So financially, I do think it is important that this has happened. Speaking of the finances, more from Ross Dellinger's article says as part of the exit agreement, the Longhorns and Sooners will owe a combined $100 million to the conference, much of which will be distributed to the 8 Big 12 legacy universities to offset an expected decrease in their 2024 revenue. The $100 million will be a deduction from their yearly distribution over the next 2 years. So this is going, it's not, Oklahoma and Texas are not like writing a check right now for $50 million a piece. It's just going to be money that's withheld from their distribution over the next few years. Now, the Dellinger article did not have details on Fox, but the Action Network and Brett McMurphy did. So here's what Brett McMurphy says. He says, instead of Texas and OU paying an exit fee, which was expected to be about $50 million each, the Big 12 allowed Oklahoma and Texas to leave early by foregoing $100 million of revenue distribution. Fox will receive $20 million of that revenue distribution to offset not getting any future Texas or Oklahoma games after 2023. The remaining $80 million of the revenue distribution will be divided by the 8 remaining Big 12 schools. He earmarks that as $10 million each. Again, I believe that with paying out some lawyers, some fees associated with all of this, it will likely be more in like the $8 million range for these Big 12 schools, but still important money there to be coming in. McMurphy adds this note, so Oklahoma and Texas fans pay attention to this. It says also in their first year in the SEC in 2024-25, Oklahoma and Texas will not receive a full share from the SEC and actually will receive less than the $40 million they would have received if they remained the final year in the Big 12, sources said. So a little bit of a small short-term cut for Texas and Oklahoma for long-term gain, obviously getting what they want by heading into the SEC. But important to get some of those financial details there. Back to Dellinger's article, officials with knowledge of the negotiations describe the Fox situation as the missing piece to any agreement. The network, which shares Big 12 broadcasting rights with ESPN, was seeking to receive a multi-million-dollar financial package and or additional inventory to be made whole. Apparently we're not going to get the weird trade where it was like Texas playing Ohio State in a few years. They're going to try and just bookmark that game for Fox as opposed to ESPN to get all that stuff seemed really convoluted. So did like future scheduling, like scheduling Big 12 teams way out in advance and future non-con games that would be property of Fox. I don't know. All that seemed way too difficult a hurdle to clear. I think you have to give Brett Yormark a lot of credit for finding a way to facilitate this deal. Again, I go back to, I feel like it was a strategic leak that came out earlier in the week, particularly the way that Thamo reported his, to then have later in the week a deal actually get done with all parties involved here. I have to wonder how strategic that leak actually was with that story. And just the fact that Yormark was able to come together and get everybody to sit down at the table, make some sacrifices, and make a deal. Fox is going to get their money. Texas and Oklahoma get to leave. The Big 12 schools still get made whole financially for the money they're giving to the 4 incoming schools. And Oklahoma and Texas are able to stomach it a little more because instead of just writing a check, you can withhold some of the future earnings, right? You know, like having a little bit of your paycheck taken out for whatever reason. Similar kind of concept here for Texas and OU. To go ahead and leave the league early. So I just continue to be unbelievably impressed with Yormark, unbelievably impressed with his ability to get things done. I think he has already backed up his reputation as a deal maker. And for all the flack that he's taken from Pac-12 circles at points in time throughout all of this, it by every metric that we have available to us publicly, it would certainly seem like he's outmaneuvering his counterpart in the Pac-12 right now, George Kliavkoff. And Kliavkoff's deal has been to remain silent. He's gotten a lot of backing from John Wilner and John Canzano to cover for him throughout a lot of this. But when Stewart Mandel suddenly is starting to report that Pac-12 ADs are frustrated, and I'm going to go ahead and just give you the full quote here. The quote from an anonymous Pac-12 AD says, "We don't have a deal because it hasn't been good." When that's coming from Stewart Mandel, who's been another guy throughout a lot of this that has he's based in Pac-12 country. He's been a fairly Pac-12 centric guy and has stood up for them in a lot of scenarios here over the last 2 years. If he's the guy that's reporting this, I mean, one, that like the info he's getting, the sourcing he's getting is from the Pac-12 side. As if we didn't already know that, you have the basic confirmation of it there with quoting an anonymous Pac-12 AD. But he's also somebody that's been inclined to give the Pac-12 the benefit of the doubt. And now here he is reporting this type of story. Just combine all of that into one, and it just seems like things are going to get pretty noisy here. And Yormark is 110% outmaneuvering his counterpart there. I just don't see the argument at this point, as much as you want to try and run the Pac-12 propaganda machine around this. Man, I mean, but by the way, there was the Pac-12 scandal where the schools are losing money because of the deal with the Pac-12 network and not paying out enough. Like someone had been paying too much, one of the TV partners. So like, it's just been a mess lately for the Pac-12. It has been a mess, and the Big 12 seems to be making moves, man. Brett Yormark is about making some money moves here. All right, I'm going to slip in DJ Crazy A's question and get to a couple of donations here. If you guys want to ask a question or get a comment in on the show tonight, the way to make your voice heard is to click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. When you do that, it will tack it up at the top for me, pin it up at the top for me, and make sure that your question or comment gets read. It's also a way just to support the work I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content, an extra live show here this week because of the gravity of the news that we're taking in here today. So all donations, very much appreciated. You can also find me on Venmo at John-Kurtz-4 there, and I appreciate all of you who do that. You could also just please like the video. That helps me out as well. It's just one click, totally free. Like the video, leave a comment on the video. You can wait until after it's done. Either way, any of that really does help me as well. If you're stoked today, if you're upset, you agree with me, you disagree with me, whatever, just let me know in the comments. Okay. DJ Crazy A. DJ Crazy A says, I'm here for the Colin Klein 411 for crying out loud. What's going on? I don't know that I can tell you much like one way or the other that's going to change really how you feel about it. I think if you've just been on Twitter, I mean, I think it wouldn't take you very long if you're on K-State Twitter to figure out that there has been some smoke to Colin Klein and the open offensive coordinator position at Notre Dame that's been vacated because Alabama hired Tommy Rees, which okay. I mean, I'm not one to doubt Nick Saban, but that sure seemed like a pretty meh hire for Alabama. But yes, it does appear that there has been a little bit of smoke to Colin Klein to Notre Dame for their offensive coordinator job. I mean, I don't know of anything being totally done yet. I also would not say that I'm here to flat out like deny that there is at least a little bit of smoke there linking it. So that's about all I can really give you. And I'm being dead honest from a standpoint of like, I mean, dude, I just worked my 9 to 5 today and like went to a networking event and came out and found out all this. And then at the same time, I'm trying to get caught up on all. So I just have not really had the time or bandwidth today to get you much more than that. But I mean, I do think it is a threat. I do think it is a threat. I don't think anything is done, but I do think it is a threat. That's about what I could tell you right now. And it would be, I mean, I'm just trying to be chill about it. That would be a tough blow for K-State. That would be a tough blow. I think Colin is a really bright, young, up-and-coming guy, clearly, if he's getting interest. And I'd even heard about Alabama kicking the tires on him a bit when that job was open too, which would kind of make sense based on how the dominoes seem to be falling right now. K-State has not announced publicly raises for the assistants yet, which is surprising to me. Would have thought that would have happened pretty quickly. They're definitely going to have to pay those guys more after what they did this year. I doubt, though, that it would really be like I've heard some people being like, well, is this why there's something happening here? I mean, look, if Notre Dame is going to be able to outpay K-State, and I think Gene Taylor, the athletic director there, is smart enough to know that, like, you need to have something in place and be talking to these guys, even if it's not publicly announced yet. They'd have to feel pretty secure in where things are at. I think Gene Taylor is clearly, with the job he's done with this athletic program and getting it to where it's at right now, I think you just have to trust him that he knows what he's doing on that front. And K-State's going to do whatever they can financially to try and step up there. But there is a point where you might just have to throw your hands up and be like, I mean, look, if Tommy Rees is going to be making $2 million, K-State ain't going to be paying a coordinator $2 million. That's just the reality of the situation. So sorry to make you wait on that, DJ Crazy A, but I hope that I hope that suffices there for a little bit of an update. R Web, what's up, R Web? R Web chiming in again. I'm a businessman for this businessman. Yes, another good Jay Z quote there. Younger, hipper, cooler. Be Izzo. Brett Yormark hopping in. Jason, can you get questions to show up on top of your video? Not with YouTube, I think, but it should show up on the side when you're watching it, that you'd be able to see those there. I keep saying at some point, like, I'm going to look into StreamYard, which I believe there you can punch up questions and make it look a little bit nicer. So I hope to get the ability to do something like that a little bit more at some point, Jason, but I do not have that ability right now. So sorry about that. Robert, what's up, Robert? Robert says, sad to see Boom to the Sooner leaving. Go Chiefs. I assume you just mean Oklahoma and not like actual Boom to the Sooner, unless I just missed something within the chat here that Boom to the Sooner was like actually leaving. I don't know, and I'm certainly hoping that is not the case. But if you are just talking about OU, then yeah, I mean, sad to see an auto dub rolling off a K-State schedule. So yeah, that sucks. That part sucks. It's worked out pretty well here lately for K-State against Oklahoma. I appreciate the Go Chiefs, Robert. I appreciate the Go Chiefs, man. What a week. By the way, yeah. My team's playing in the Super Bowl here in a couple of days. So a lot going on. Joseph, what's up, Joseph? Appreciate you, man. Joseph Kirkpatrick, thank you for being here. Thank you for the donation. Joseph asks, is the Big 12 going to be happy getting only the $80 million? 20 million going to Fox. Number seems smaller than I anticipated. Hook 'em as always. Joseph, Texas fan in there. Are they going to be disappointed? I think the expectations had been set here for a while. Who was it? There's been so many reports here about this Big 12 and Oklahoma and Texas situation lately. I don't for sure remember who it was, but that number kind of got floated out there within the last week. I remember talking about it here on the show, but that kind of set it up for like, hey, this money could be anywhere from like 60 million to 130 million that both schools are going to cough up and pay here. It winds up being 50 million per school. I just kind of expected that you're probably in. We also knew that the motivation on the Big 12 side had been there to get this done. We'd seen enough quotes from anonymous Big 12 athletic directors, administrators, etc., that it felt pretty obvious to me like a deal would be struck here, that it was not going to be some totally massively lucrative deal for the Big 12 because of that. Like, it was not going to be some giant boom. So I think, like, if you would have told, I guess I'd put it like this, Joseph, if you would have told Big 12 fans in July of 2021 that was all it was going to be, I think there would be some disappointment there. But I think as time has gone on, the league has been able to stand on its own 2 feet and have a lot of success. No thanks to Texas and Oklahoma here the last couple of years. Everybody's feeling good, wanting to move on. The new schools are coming in. Yormark's thinking about expansion and moving on to the next thing. I think we're all kind of prepared. We were prepared for this and not expecting just a giant swimming in money, Scrooge McDuck, take a dive into the coins kind of paycheck to be coming here. So at least those that I think are realistic about it won't be super disappointed about that. Christian, thank you for being here, Christian. Christian says, where do you put 24, 25 Big 12 expansion odds now? Great question. Boy, I mean, the way things are moving right now, 50-50, but I mean, that's a pretty, I won't say uneducated because obviously I follow this, but it's not like an insidery information informed opinion. I'm just reading the tea leaves now and where the reporting on this is going and where like just the legitimate news is actually going on this. And by the way, I should have mentioned this too. The Big 12 sent out a press release. I got the email from the Big 12, their official press release, that the Oklahoma and Texas deal is done. So that is official. The Big 12 has confirmed that. That much is totally done. Calico Willie, I know Calico. Is Colin Klein? No. Yeah, that's my reaction too, but hopefully it doesn't happen. Calico. I don't think that it's fully done right now, but who knows? Let's just cross our fingers, man. Cross our fingers on that. Toaster oven, but spelled like a toe. I'm down with that. Toaster Oven said, would the TV deals change if the Big 12 expands? Yes, I believe that it was reported that there is a pro rata clause in there, but I think it was only for Power Five schools, like current Power Five schools being added. Someone can correct me if I'm wrong, and maybe I am hellaciously wrong about that in the chat. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was what the deal was going to be. So, yeah, I think that if Pac-12 schools were added, yes, you would be basically getting in the same share per squad there. That it would not be very dilutive. If it's going to be anybody else, then yeah, I think you're starting to become dilutive there as far as that goes. Boom to the Sooner, thank you. Boom to the Sooner confirming he's not leaving. Wanted to thank the Big 12 for taking K-State off the schedule as a parting gift. Yes, of course. Of course, Boom to the Sooner, of course. Thank you for Boom to the Sooner. I genuinely appreciate you being here throughout this whole thing, like all the time, caring about this league, even as an Oklahoma fan. Genuinely do appreciate that. Robert, appreciate your donation and support. Robert says the Pac-12 is in serious trouble. Stanford would rather go independent than be in a conference with San Diego State. And Robert says he lives in San Diego. It's interesting you say that because the attitude that we always hear about projected is like Stanford would rather go independent and just like wither and die on the vine as far as their football program goes than play in a league with the Big 12 schools, thumbing their nose at the Big 12 schools. Now, San Diego State and SMU academically, I think fits probably the profile that Stanford would be okay with, but apparently not San Diego State there. So it doesn't shock me, man. I mean, Stanford, I've been to Palo Alto. And I know what the vibes kind of are there. So it all makes sense. It all makes sense to me. If you guys want to hop in, click the $ below the chat box where it says say something. That is how you can donate, make your question or comment, get on the show tonight. It will pin it up at the top for me and ensures that it gets on there. Supports the work I'm doing, bringing you Big 12 content week in and week out here as well. And please like the video if you have not. Totally free. Easy way to support the channel as well. Let's see if there anything else left worth reading in the Dellinger article. Just more details on the money. Despite the 4 new members taking a smaller distribution cut in 23 and 24, about $18 million each year, the 8 schools were expected to see the old school, the hateful 8. The 8 schools were expected to see at least a 1-year reduction of $5 to $8 million in 24 before the new TV deal begins in 25. That's what this money from Texas and Oklahoma is going to cover up. Here's a quote from a Big 12 official. It says, it's a win-win-win. And Ross Dellinger says, well, sort of. It says the Big 12 handed Texas and Oklahoma quite the parting gifts in their last conference schedule in the league. Texas is playing at Houston and plays at Iowa State in late November. Oklahoma plays 3 of the 4 new members, including 2 on the road, and that includes a game at BYU in mid-November. I would just look at that and say, like, if they're about this SEC life, we're about this SEC life, we're going to go play teams in the SEC West, whatever it may be. You're going to be worried about having to play a road game at Houston, where Dana Holgorsen just did a press conference talking about we're going to be last in the Big 12 with facilities and support and all that, and we got to worry about all that. Like, it's big bad Texas. Like, we're going to complain about that and like a tough parting gift, and then playing at Iowa State. Like, Iowa State won 4 games last year. Like, so we're going to complain about a road game at Iowa State. What happens when you're playing a road game at Georgia? What happens when you're playing a road game at LSU? I don't know. Too much is made of that. And then still, this also notes, as of Tuesday, the schools had not posted the league schedules on their websites. Come on, man. And was it really, for all the complaining about Texas and Oklahoma having to play the 4 new schools, theoretically, with what you'd expect to be a little bit of an adjustment period here coming into a new conference, and 4 schools that didn't have their greatest year last year, 2021 was a much better year for the 4 incoming schools. Theoretically, that would be kind of an easier route with the schedule here if you were having to play a lot of those schools. And Oklahoma does. They have 3 of the 4 new members there. What are you complaining about, man? Just go play the games. I am sick of that. I am definitely sick of that. And that is one of the reasons that I'm just very glad to be moving on here. And some of the complaints are just so stupid for schools that fancy themselves as the big boys that are going on to leave the kiddie table and go play with the big boys. Don't complain about having to play your little 5-year-old nephew in hoops then on your way out the door, buckos. But hey, with the way this past football season went, I suppose anything would make sense to complain about for Texas and Oklahoma there, because they sure as hell struggled against the Big 12 schedule this year. All right, we have not gotten to the Pac-12 story yet, which again, to me, as newsworthy as Texas OU is, and I understand why it draws the headlines, and I understand why it's the bigger deal here to most. This to me, I think long term could be the bigger deal here, that we're seeing these kind of cracks in the Pac-12 armor, so to speak. This is from Stewart Mandel. Consider the source. West Coast based guy, has been, I think most of us have felt like he has been a little homerish with the Pac-12 throughout this whole cycle since 2021. In conference realignment, has said multiple times that he expected the Pac-12's media valuation to be a little bit higher than the Big 12. All of that is important context for what I'm about to read to you that he put out today. Stewart Mandel says 3 people with knowledge of the discussion said Commissioner George Kliavkoff is struggling to find partners willing to pay close to what the league is seeking. George Kliavkoff is struggling to find partners willing to pay close to what the league is seeking. 2 of those sources said Kliavkoff overpromised his members on how many bidders there would be and what dollar amount they could command. Here is the supposed target that George Kliavkoff told these people: a target north of $40 million per school, according to one league athletic director. Today, it's uncertain whether the Pac-12 will even be able to exceed the $31.6 million average the Big 12 reportedly landed in a 6-year extension with Fox and ESPN reached last fall. And then the quote from the AD, quote, "We don't have a deal because it hasn't been good," said the AD. So a lot of questions there. One, who is this athletic director that seemingly is unhappy? Is this an athletic director at a four-corner school that could possibly be plucked by the Big 12 in all of this? But even beyond thinking quite that far, how about just take everything in here, that the target was north of $40 million. The reality is they may not even be able to pass what the Big 12 has gotten in money. And the whole idea with streaming and Amazon and whatever it's going to be, the Pac-12 taking a cut in visibility, it was supposed to be to increase things financially, and that they would take a PR win and a slight financial win by going the digital route over what the Big 12 did. Now we're seeing multiple reports. Mandel is not the first to report this. CBS Sports, Dennis Dodd did yesterday, that they were having trouble getting the numbers that they wanted. We're talking now about a league that is making a sacrifice in visibility and potentially still not making as much money as the Big 12. And that is where you can start to have problems. And I know, I've seen John Wilner write it a bunch of times, and this is one where I don't know where the truth would lie in this. I've seen him write a bunch of times that, hey, even if it's just a nominal difference, like there's not very much difference between the two monetary wise, that would not be enough. Even if it's a couple $1 million more for the Big 12 TV deal, it would not be enough for somebody to jump. Boy, I don't know. We're seeing athletic directors already frustrated here because they felt like they've been overpromised. And if you're losing faith in your commissioner, could have a little bit of money to gain. You've got a commissioner now in the Big 12 who seems to sure know what the hell he is doing. You've got more stability in the Big 12 right now, certainly than the Pac-12. This is what we've talked about for a long time on this channel. I've said it over and over again. Like, I didn't think any of this was really imminent, but you start to build a case here and you get little cracks and things adding up over time. And if it is Arizona, which has always seemed like the most likely to jump, affinity for basketball, they could join the best basketball league. They're probably losing a lot of visibility with their basketball program if a bunch of the games are going to be on streaming. So they care more about it than anybody else. They could have that itch scratched in a second by the Big 12, plus be making similar, perhaps more money, with more stability in a place that they would culturally probably fit better. Now, can you pull Arizona State along with them? Jason Scheer covers Arizona for 24/7 Sports, and we've referenced him a bunch here, and I know a lot of people in the Pac-12, I think, would say he certainly is at odds with like he does not like John Canzano. You think we don't like John Canzano much around here? Jason Scheer does not like John Canzano much. So he's been kind of on the opposite side of a lot of these Pac-12 reporters on what's gone on. So I guess you can decide whether or not you feel like this is biased or what. I don't know Jason Scheer well enough. I don't know his history of coverage. All I can tell you is what he tweeted. But he said 2 things I know right now. 1, SMU would take pretty much whatever the Pac-12 offers. And 2, rumors of Arizona State being pissed are true. ASU is more open to the idea of leaving than it has been before. Doesn't mean it will, but the mindset has changed. And that would be a change in mindset there because I believe it's Ray Anderson, the Arizona State athletic director. I'm going to look that up. Yeah, Ray Anderson. Ray Anderson had some quotes before that seemed very much in line with being supportive of the Pac-12, and I kind of thought, well, that ship has probably sailed as far as getting Arizona State involved here. But now that report from Shear, the fact that there's an anonymous AD being quoted here in this story from Mandel, I mean, you can definitely speculate whether or not that would be Ray Anderson that gave that quote and that information to Mandel. That would be my speculation. Here's a little bit more from the story. It says Kliavkoff made some key miscalculations. At last summer's Pac-12 Media Day, he suggested the Big Ten's pending jackpot, which wound up being $8.1 billion over 7 years, would have a ripple effect on the Pac-12. But the Big Ten is a much more watched conference that garnered interest from nearly every major linear and digital media company. The Pac-12, by contrast, has found fewer bidders since going to the open market. This is one of those Pac-12 talking points that has never made much sense to me and has felt either like these guys are just incredibly naive, or this was a way, like this was just a narrative that they were trying to push to deflect some blame for the situation that they're in. But we've seen that written from Wilner and Canzano before, that like the Big 12 set the floor for the Pac-12 TV deal, that they had a chance to make more money before the Big 12 did their deal, because Kliavkoff was just saying, well, look what the Big 10 got. You guys have given that to the Big 10. Surely we will be a somewhat high percentage of that. And then when the Big 12 came in first, it was, well, now the Big 12 ruined it because they put a cap on like what the floor would be. And people would look at it and say, well, we're not going to give you much more than that because you're very similar to that league. My whole thing with that is, well, one, if that did happen, then you better start changing your narrative on Yormark because it was pretty brilliant. And two, if that's not the case, newsflash, the Pac-12 was not going to get $40 million per school per year, no matter what. No matter whether the Big 12 deal was done or not, that just was not happening. The Big 10 deal is just not very relevant to the Pac-12 to me in any way, shape, or form, because you're playing a totally different game. We're talking about payouts that are at least double, basically, what you're getting now, more eventually by the time that Big 10 TV deal is done. And it just seems like the Pac-12 has had these delusions of grandeur with that this whole time. So I'm led to believe either it was a coping mechanism and a narrative that they were trying to push to shield and deflect blame from the situation that they're in, not being able to get the money they actually want, or they're just unbelievably naive and Kliavkoff didn't know what he was doing. But think back to, there was that quote that came from, I forget, was that Pac-12 basketball media day? I think maybe is what it was when Kliavkoff spoke, one of the few times he's spoken in the last 6 months or so. He said, we're going to catch them. We're going to catch the SEC and Big Ten financially eventually. That was a thing that he said and got really crushed for across the college football world. And I just could not believe. I mean, even Wilner tried to conjure up some sort of a, like, here's what I think he was saying, even if I don't totally agree with it. And even that just didn't really make much sense, man. I don't, unless Kliavkoff is playing some wild game of 5D checkers that nobody, even his own athletic directors, see right now. I just think the guy really botched this thing by overvaluing what he had. And Brett Yormark understood what he had, understood the value that is there, but also was realistic about it. Hey, Texas and Oklahoma leaving is going to be the best thing for everybody. Maybe we're not going to get this full $100 million a piece, but we can broker a deal that's going to be good for all of us, and I can get to work on expansion sooner. Hey, we may not be. Brett Yormark was not out there trying to sell ESPN and Fox on like, hey, $40 million a year per school. He signs for $32 million a year per school, understands the value of getting it done when he got it done, making everybody stable in a realignment landscape that really requires that, and still taking in as much distribution as possible, as much visibility as possible with Fox and ESPN. We have two guys that have played this totally differently, and it sure seems like all evidence is suggesting that the Big 12 has done this the right way and the Pac-12 has not. A little bit more here from Mandel. It says Kliavkoff also sounded certain last summer that his league would be next in line after the Big 10 because its deal was up a year earlier than the Big 12's. But Big 12 counterpart Brett Yormark outflanked him, convincing existing partners ESPN and Fox to open up negotiations a year early. Whereas Kliavkoff drew out the process by taking his rights to market, Yormark reached an extension of the current contract within a couple months. And the Big 12's agreement may have provided its own ripple effect on negotiations by unofficially setting a ceiling. Quote, it's tough when your neighbor across the street sells his house for a low price, says the Pac-12 administrator. Again, I would just say, look, in that scenario, in that hypothetical, Zillow was not giving you $40 million per year anyway, Pac-12. Doesn't matter what your neighbor's house sold for. If Fox went to just pull up the Pac-12 on Zillow, I mean, that thing's reading like $29-30 million per year, not 40, no matter what the Big 12 had done. So I just, that talking point really, really annoys me. And it feels kind of just like a victim mentality there in the Pac-12. And we'll just blame it on the Big 12. Maybe like look in the mirror, man. Maybe like look in the mirror what's going on with yourself. The article says, which brings us back to expansion, adding schools like San Diego State and SMU would not add significant value in a traditional TV deal, but a streaming service like Amazon or ESPN Plus could be interested in volume. So he makes the case that, like, hey, the TV deal could go from $270 million a year to $300 million a year by adding more inventory. Sources say the new schools would initially receive less than a full share. I think that's all expected. This part probably somewhat important. It says, well, those sources still believe the media deal will be completed before any expansion becomes official. They also understand there could be pressure from media partners to swap the order of events so they know exactly what the inventory will be. That's kind of in line with like what we've seen with things picking up. Cleve Cobb making his trip to SMU. There were pictures. If you are on Twitter, you probably saw him yesterday. There were pictures that came out of him being in a suite at the SMU basketball game yesterday. So that is clearly picked up for the Pac-12. With speculation being TV partners saying like, hey, actually, you're going to need to do this and make sure you have extra inventory before we sign on to go do this thing. And that there's probably some pressure for that. So whether or not it gets announced officially that expansion is happening before the TV deal or not, it sure seems like that's a part of what's happening backdoor here in these negotiations that everybody would understand. Like that's got to be a part of it. Let's see. Cleve Cobb, after a cold and rainy day in Dallas, Cleve Cobb indeed attended the SMU basketball game, tried to stay inconspicuous. That's just information about the SMU thing. I'm not sure how much you guys really care about that. We have further confirmation that SMU did have conversations with the Pac-12, Big 12, and ACC, interestingly enough, dating back to at least last summer. We saw that reported yesterday by CBS Sports. One final note here, and then I'll get to all your donations. One final note here, kind of regarding Gonzaga. It says the Big 12 continues to talk with Gonzaga. One high-ranking source at the school confirms. This is from the school side. Gonzaga says they're still talking to the Big 12. And this is interesting. Again, back to how Kliavkov and Yormark seem to be playing this. A school official at Gonzaga, school administrator, said they described the Big 12's approach as much more forward-thinking than the Pac-12. Is anybody shocked by that? People at Gonzaga, and the Pac-12 line on Gonzaga has long been from Wilner and Canzano, like, oh, look, the Pac-12 has been talking to them for longer. The Pac-12 is where they would rather be in the Pac-12 than the Big 12. Just kind of brushing off any Big 12 threat there. Well, here's somebody from a Pac-12 based writer in Stewart Mandel quoting a source at Gonzaga saying that the Big 12's approach has been much more forward-thinking than the Pac-12, kind of confirming what we all have seemingly been able to see with our own two freaking eyes this whole time. Yormark's the guy who gets stuff done. Yormark's the guy who's forward-thinking. Kliavkov seems in over his head. That to me just backs up that whole narrative and what we thought. Says Yormark's background is in basketball, and he sees serious potential in the idea of making the best men's basketball conference even stronger. Gonzaga is determined only to make a move to either conference if it is for all sports. I guess one last thing here. Would the Pac-12 inviting SMU and entering the Dallas-Fort Worth market be detrimental for the Big 12? How will Yormark and his board assess the threat? I don't know, man. I'm not losing much sleep. I don't know what Yormark thinks. I'm not losing much sleep over the Pac-12 adding SMU. Like, cool. They've taken a lot of national flack for that. The reaction from most people nationally does not seem to be that would be something that should set off a bunch of alarm bells in Big 12 country. All right, going to run through your donations here. That's pretty much all the information I have for you guys. So we now have that out there. Let's get to your questions or comments here. Daniel, I appreciate you as always, man. Thank you for being here once again. Daniel, tremendous supporter of the channel. Really appreciate you. Daniel says, glad that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving and everyone is happy. I've been watching and waiting for the Chiefs to go on a run like this since I was a kid in the 70s. Go Chiefs. Go Cats, and don't go Colin Klein. I like that. Yes, stay Colin Klein. Go Cats. Go Chiefs. I'm about that life, Daniel. I am about that life. As a Chiefs fan, I mean, this is just a run you could only dream about. And I think we're only about a quarter of the way into it with Patrick Mahomes and his career here. So completely agree with you on that. And honestly, yeah, some good vibes for the conference as a whole. Good vibes right now with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. Everyone's going to be happy. Seems like the TV networks, at least at this point, are happy. Like that Big 12 source said, that was quoted in one of the articles earlier, win, win, win. It's a win, win, win. That's Michael Scott quote. Win, win, win. Yes, that is what we appear to have here, Daniel. So appreciate you bringing some good vibes. Appreciate you supporting the channel and being here, my friend, as always. Drew, what's up, Drew? Drew, thank you for supporting the channel. Thank you for dropping in. Drew says, what's your opinion about Nebraska moving back to the Big 12 now that Texas has left the Big 12, or do you think they'll stay back in the Big 10? Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, I understandably so, have wanted to dream about Nebraska being back in the league. I mean, I'd love to have them back. Get Nebraska, Colorado, A&M, is it like, yeah, I mean, I grew up on the Big 12. I would love to have it. Money difference is too great. I mean, you're talking about Nebraska. Nebraska would be giving up like $40 million per year to come back to the Big 12. That just it won't happen. Even if Nebraska stays perpetually stuck in this 4 or 5 win hell that they've been in for a long time, for the rest of eternity in the Big 10, I think the pride and the money would be way too much to ever turn back on that front. So yeah, that ship I believe has truly sailed there. Not much putting the toothpaste back in the tube, to steal another analogy there. All right, man, I've got some catching up to do. Okay, Daniel, the Pac-12 school whose AD has complained the most has been Oregon. Could that be the leak? Possibly. I mean, I would see why Oregon, because Oregon, the most valuable entity in that conference, has to be as frustrated as anybody right now, being like, oh, okay, man. I mean, SMU, we're doing this SMU thing. We still don't have a deal. We were promised $40 million. Now it's looking like way less. Like, what is going on here? And couple that with Oregon's frustration probably has ratcheted up even more with Kevin Warren leaving the Big Ten. Like, you think about how Oregon's situation has changed. Like, Kevin Warren was the one really pushing expansion and all of that. Now he's out the door, and you're dealing with, fumbling, bumbling, stumbling George Kliavkov right now. And the mess that is this TV media rights negotiation situation with the Pac-12. Yeah, I'm sure Oregon is pretty frustrated. So yes, I could definitely see them being a leak there as well. Oregon and Washington. Now that we haven't really even talked about that, and that's something that I have not seriously entertained in a very long time. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, if this is going to get bad, and say, like, if an Arizona and Arizona State dude's trying to make that move and further deplete the Pac-12, can you get an Oregon on board to go do like a temporary holdover in the Big 12, like an Oregon and Washington deal there? I don't know. I mean, I still certainly would not predict that. But the more things become unstable in the Pac-12, and the more we get articles with ADs anonymously quoted in the Pac-12 as being not happy, the more that becomes a reality, or a possibility rather. I mean, the more that is on the table. So it is something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind for sure, that that could come back into the rearview mirror. Whether or not you can pull that. Long way to go, and don't take that. I try to be very reasonable here in the way that I approach all of this. Like, I am not trying to say that is a likelihood to happen, but I do think it's at least it's back on my radar more so than it was before. Much more so than it was before the news of the last 24 hours or so. Boom to the Sooner. What's up, Boom to the Sooner? Checking in again. Appreciate you, man. Boom to the Sooner says, how about that Super Bowl with 2 former Big 12 quarterbacks? Who you got, Eagles or Chiefs for the win? It is 2 former Big 12 quarterbacks. Oklahoma, I will completely allow you to claim Jalen Hurts, as can Alabama. I think we've discussed this before. Like, people are going to have to get used to that. There was a lot of dumb fighting about who can claim what quarterback when they played at multiple schools. We're all going to have to get over that, because guys transfer a lot now this day and age. You're going to be able to claim both schools. Both schools can claim him. That's fine. Who do I got? I mean, Boom to the Sooner. Come on. You've been around long enough to know who I got in the Super Bowl. Patrick Mahomes against Jalen Hurts. Outside of one random Philadelphia radio guy who went viral this week with his dumb tweet saying that Jalen Hurts is how you would build a quarterback before Patrick Mahomes. We all know who the advantage holder is at QB here. And I don't think the Chiefs, Chiefs got blitzed in that Super Bowl against the Patriots. One, they were playing Tom Brady. Two, that offensive line was a train wreck and everybody was hurt. They're in a much better situation there this time around. Maybe I'm wrong and the ankle will really be an issue for Pat, but I don't know. I'm pretty confident the Chiefs win. I'm pretty confident in Chiefs win. Hopefully, those are not famous last words, but I'm pretty confident in a Chiefs victory. And speaking of that, I guess it works that I'm doing this live show here tonight because I am obviously not doing a live show on Sunday night like up against the Super Bowl. So I was going to wait until Monday on that anyway. So this actually helps a little bit to have the live show snuck in here tonight. David, what's up, David? David Colmer, thank you for the support, man. Appreciate you being here. David says, wonder if there's something extra in the UTOU departure from ESPN. Maybe they make up the pro rata that Fox said they would not pay for adding Power Fives. Yeah, I haven't really seen. There's not been any reporting on that. It's all been about Fox is going to get $20 million. And that I think is a part of the deal making here that like Brett Yormark, that should be emphasized. Like Yormark was willing to cut a part of that $100 million that's coming from both of those to Fox just to get it done, to make a deal happen. Maybe that was a little bit less than what Fox actually wanted, but they convinced them to take the deal and run. For ESPN, I mean, I think that they were going to be set either way with Texas and OU because they've got the SEC rights. It's better for ESPN if they go ahead and just get that done and get those schools into the SEC. So yeah, I have not seen much reporting in the way of like what ESPN's role in all of this was and how they really feel about this. I will point back to one other thing that was said earlier this week, I believe by Dellinger, and that was neither Fox nor ESPN wanted the appearance of taking a loss publicly. And I think the way this has worked out, I would imagine both have to be fairly happy. I don't think there's any way you could look at this and say it's a public loss for Fox or anything. I mean, they're getting $20 million. Everybody's kind of moving on. I think the general public doesn't really care that much. Like there's not enough to glean here and take and say, oh, there was a big winner, big loser. It's kind of like, okay, this is happening and it makes sense. And we all kind of assume this would happen. And it's not any crazy outlandish number going to one of the TV networks. So I don't think anyone would have any public perceptions of who wins or loses there. Daniel checking in again. Appreciate you, Daniel. Says, if you're a Chiefs fan and you were in South Philly, make sure you visit Arrowhead East, a.k.a. Big Charlie's. Yeah, I've seen that about Big Charlie's, that like Chiefs bar in Philly that like Spags, I know Steve Spagnuolo has hung out there before. I saw some pictures of that. I also saw that Big Charlie's, there was like such a demand for this Super Bowl because, again, Chiefs bar in Philly, such a demand for this Super Bowl to watch the game there that they just said, we're closing. We're not going to be open for it because we're not going to be able to serve our regulars because so many other people wanted to come in and like make reservations and stuff. So that was I was very surprised to see that headline. Pretty crazy stuff there. But yeah, if and when I make it to Philly, which I've never been to Philly, definitely want to go. I will absolutely check in with that. The Woodhaven. What's up, the Woodhaven? Thank you for being here, my friend. Appreciate you. Says, do you think Gonzaga is the next move before the four corner schools go Cougs? It's just hard to say. It's just really hard to say. There's obviously plenty of smoke on the Gonzaga front. I would say I'm putting more and more thought into it being a reality from the Big 12 side because of the way this is being reported, again, from Mandel through a Gonzaga source. The Big 12 is much more forward thinking in all of this. I would guess that Gonzaga can kind of see some of the writing on the wall here with the Pac-12 right now. I think it's possible, but I would feel out of my element predicting one way or the other on that. I just think something is likely to happen within the next calendar year based on the report that the Big 12 now is going to be extremely aggressive with Yormark. I think with the Gonzaga thing too, you'd need to be thinking a little bit bigger. Like if that happens, it's probably going to be Gonzaga with somebody else. Apparently, I shouldn't say this has been reported because this was MHV3ER, whatever, on Twitter, who was saying like, Villanova and Creighton and some of those schools are being talked to as well. I would guess that if Gonzaga happens, there'd be some kind of deal like that where they're thinking bigger than just adding Gonzaga and really going full send on the best Big 12 or the best basketball conference in the country whole thing. But don't know for sure. I'm not in the game of really predicting one or the other as far as that goes right now. If I were Yormark, I would be more concerned with like front burnering the four corner schools, which seems like an obvious answer there because I just think there's so much more value being that they wouldn't just be basketball only members. So I think that would probably be the priority. But I don't know whether or not that is going to be the reality. So, Rob, what's up, Rob? Thank you for being here, Rob. Everybody say hi to Rob. If you enjoy the work that I do here, you've got Rob to thank, because I started as an intern for him back in like 2009, I think it was 2008 or 2009. Started as an intern for my guy Rob. Taught me everything I know. But great dude. Appreciate the support here. I don't see a message with it, Rob. I just see the donation, so I appreciate your support, my friend. We need to catch up sometime and grab a drink or something, man. It's been a while. So appreciate you. Appreciate all of you who have been here. Getting close to the end here. Jeff, thank you for the donation. Jeff, I do not see a message with yours either, but thank you for supporting the channel. Both Jeff and Rob with their first super chats in there, I see from YouTube. So thank you guys for doing that for the first time and supporting what I'm doing here on the channel. Robert, what's up, Robert? Checking in again. Robert says, why would any streaming service overpay for Pac-12 inventory when Oregon and Washington have one foot out the door? They would be Fox in the UT-OU situation. Well, you have to think about this, Robert, that like with that, the grant of rights comes into play there. So theoretically, if you get the grant of rights signed and they have signed those rights away for however long it might be, to Kliavkoff and company in the Pac-12, like they're going to have to be there, or you'd be getting some money, like financially, you'd be in the same sort of situation that like Fox is right now, just getting a check because Texas and Oklahoma are leaving a year early. So I would at least point that out. But the thing that's more poignant to me out of that is, what about that grant of rights? What about the way this is going with now fractures in the Pac-12's foundation to the point where Mandel is having to report about ADs being unhappy? Seems like that makes it less likely that you're getting a grant of rights signed, which is a very important part of all this. Got to get the TV partner to sign up, but then you got to get everybody in your conference to actually sign on the dotted line too. So yeah, I mean, I think that's an important deal to remember here in all this. Isaiah, finally, Isaiah. I see you, Isaiah. What's up, Isaiah? He says, thank you for your support, my friend. Says Houston Cougar basketball is the only team in the top 10 in net rankings for offense and defense. I think the Cougars can win the championship in Houston this year. I do, man. I all the respect in the world for that team. I think they are 110% legit. This is not like what Sampson's done at Houston is not some overnight success, like fluky, like 1 year run sort of a thing. That to me is an important part of like predicting what the success could be on down the road. It's not just a 1 year cutesy story. This is a program that's been there and been doing it. Sampson is well established as a very good coach. I've told you guys a story before. Desperately wanted K-State to hire him multiple times throughout the past because I just thought he was that legit and that good. And I mean, yeah, the other thing is, yes, the metrics, everything looks good as far as the metrics go for Houston. Really nice resume. You're going to get no real pushback from me on that, other than just the tournament's a crapshoot and it's really hard. But that's a part of why I like saying the fact that they've been a program, been established, played in big games, had great seasons here recently. Like, that's what you have to do. I think Kansas is a pretty good example of what I'm talking about, because like Bill Self has had some great teams, like some wonderful teams that got bounced pretty early. The team that lost to Northern Iowa in 2010, they were number one for most of the year with Sharon Collins, Cole Aldrich, those guys, they got bounced early. Then you have a team like last year that I don't think was one of the best, 5 teams that Bill Self has had at Kansas, but they wind up with a more favorable path and they win the tournament. And I'm not saying that as a knock, because the idea is, if you're a 1, 2, 3, you're a high seed every year in the tournament. Some years it'll break well for you. Some years it won't. That's the nature of the tournament. But if you're there every single year doing that, building the kind of program that Kelvin Sampson is building right now, then you get that opportunity. You get that opportunity to have a favorable route set up for you, even if some years it's a more difficult beat. So it's kind of a long game. I guess that's really the idea here. Like the NCAA tournament can be a long game if you're trying to win a championship there. Bill Self, who I think is hands down the best college basketball coach in the conference, has had, like I said, a lot of great teams that have been bounced early. The team like last year that goes pretty deep and has 2, his championship was in 2007. and then won last year in 22. We're talking about like 15, I guess like 16 seasons, I think that would technically be. And he's been like a 1, 2, or 3 seed every single year there. So like it's tough. It's just tough. Houston could legitimately be the best team in the country going into the tournament and lose in the second round. I mean, that is the reality, the unfortunate reality. Virginia, another good example, right? They lose to the 1 seed, they come back and go get it done with Tony Bennett. Redemption story there, but that's also total polar opposites on the ends of the spectrum as to what can happen to you in the NCAA tournament. So that's what I would say about Houston. I'm not going to lie and sit here and say that I've like watched Houston film and broken down every single game of theirs this year. But I know people that I trust think they are very legit. Gary Parrish, for one, who I think is as good as anybody out there on college basketball. I've heard him multiple times talk on his podcast and interviews in interviews saying that he thinks Houston is the best team in the country. In fact, when he came on our podcast on 3-Maw, I think he said he thought Houston would win the national championship. Maybe I heard that on Sports Radio 810 in Kansas City because he does a weekly appearance there too. But I think pretty recently I heard Gary Parrish say he thinks Houston is the team he would consider the favorite to win it all. So add that on top of it all. And yes, I think Houston absolutely could be there. All right. I'm all talked out, guys. Gave you an extra day here because of how important all this news was. Hope you enjoyed it. Sincerely appreciate everybody being here. Very lively, extra people in the chat here tonight. That's been awesome to see. Reminder, you can support me on Venmo, John-Kurtz-4. If you would like to, if you're catching up after the fact on this, please continue to share the word on social media, word of mouth, however it is that you talk to your friends that are Big 12 fans, college football, college basketball fans. Let them know about what's happening here on this channel. And let's continue to grow this community. I so appreciate all of you guys that are a part of it. Hit me up on Twitter at JLKurtz if you have something as well. I try to be pretty responsive in the DMs there, and they are open. And with that, I think that's about it. Like the video, comment on the video, share the video, and I will talk to you guys soon. Go Chiefs.